Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Had to Save Cursed Hinata Part 4. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Sasuke groaned as he lay down on his bed, his eyes tired from keeping his bloodline activated for as long as he could. It had only been 2 days since Kakashi had instructed him to keep it activated continuously, and one would have expected him to be improving. But all keeping it active seemed to do was exacerbate the strain from the previous day. It was a painful form of endurance training that Sasuke had never encountered before, but the young Uchiha knew it was necessary. If he could reduce the strain on his eyes from the Sharingan, it would undoubtedly become far more useful in combat. The fact that he had to deactivate it during his fight with Kiba in order to create a shadow clone proved this. Kakashi had explained that the Sharingan drained the body in an unusual way, and that simply increasing his reserves would not provide the solution he sought. It would undoubtedly help, but the Sharingan would continue to consume chakra at the same rate. It was the equivalent of purchasing time. So, unlike Sakura, he couldn't simply deplete his reserves repeatedly to improve his situation. He had to use the Sharingan to exhaust them, and the main problem with that was that it would hurt like hell. He was getting tired of feeling like he had a constant headache. Sasuke estimated it was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but all he wanted to do was fall over and die. He knew that the specialized training would benefit him greatly in the future, but the fact that he wasn't even a third of the way through made him shudder in anticipation whenever he thought about the days ahead. The Uchiha rolled his head to the side, his Sharingan deactivated. Kakashi had strictly warned him about the fine line between pushing his eyes to the limit and permanently damaging them. However, he knew he wouldn't be able to sleep. His eyes, and thus his head, hurt terribly, but the rest of his body wasn't even close to tired. Though he could use a jutsu or two, Kakashi had also advised him to limit the chakra he used over the next few days so that more could be saved for his eyes to eat through. That meant Sasuke couldn't even dream of creating a shadow clone to spar with, and he had to settle for training with other people. The problem was that Kakashi seemed to spend more time reading that book than sparring with the Uchiha, and Sakura was off building a resistance to another type of poison, unlike the day before. With Naruto still training with Jiraiya, the Uchiha was thoroughly bored and unable to properly exercise his body. Push-ups became a little tedious once you reached the 200 mark. The black-haired boy's thoughts wandered to his blonde teammate. He and Sakura had almost solved the case. They were almost certain Shikamaru's words were correct. It explained so much about the boy's oddities, from the ungodly amount of chakra he possessed to the whisker marks on his face, while also sounding like a good enough reason for Naruto to have been unfairly kicked out of the exam. Sasuke didn't remember much about the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha, having only been a few months old at the time. But he did remember it being a huge tragedy. Hundreds of Konoha's best ninja and Hokage vanished in a single night, property damage from which one can still see the aftermath today. There are also many bereaved families. If Naruto did indeed have the Kyuubi sealed inside him, the Uchiha could understand why someone might have held a grudge against him for so long. Sasuke was well aware that you only get one set of parents, and once they were gone for good. In an almost ironic twist, the Chunin's situation with Naruto, or rather the fox within him, may have paralleled Sasuke's with Itachi. It was difficult to forget, and it was nearly impossible to forgive. While Sasuke was upset that he had been kicked out of the Chunin exams, he wasn't sure he could blame the Chunin for it all, at least not anymore. However, Naruto was not the Kyuubi. To blame him for the monster's wrongdoings would be akin to him going to the person who had trained Itachi, and extolling his vengeance on them just because Itachi was out of town. With the almost gut-wrenching pain of his overstrained eyes, Sasuke gritted his teeth and burrowed his head deeper into his pillow. Sakura stood in the middle of the training ground, her gaze fixed on her sensei, who stood across from her, his single eye fixed on his pupil. He had just given her all of the information she needed to perform the technique, and Sakura felt prepared. "Are you sure about this?" Kakashi asked, receiving an affirmative nod from his pink-haired student. "Proceed." Sakura began to shape her chakra perfectly by slamming her hands into the patented seal. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," she exclaimed as a burst of smoke appeared next to her, revealing a perfect replica of the Kunoichi standing there. "Congratulations, you've created your first shadow clone." Kakashi congratulated the pink-haired girl. "That didn't seem as stressful as you made it out to be," said the original Sakura, trying to figure out how much of her chakra reserves had been depleted. "That's because you have near-perfect chakra control," Kakashi explained. With Sasuke, his chakra control isn't as good as yours, so some of his energy is wasted in creating the clone. However, his reserves are larger than yours, so he, like you, doesn't truly feel the strain of creating a single clone. What about Naruto? Sakura wondered, knowing how many clones the boy seemed to produce on an hourly basis. You can figure it out on your own, Kakashi said, making Sakura and her clone scowl at their sensei. There is one thing I will tell you about shadow clones that neither of the other two boys know. Sakura was piqued. Naruto had been able to perform shadow clones since they were assigned to the same team, and she was about to learn something about his patented technique that the blonde didn't. What is it? She asked, struggling to keep her excitement in check. Before I tell you, though, I want you to promise not to tell your teammates, as their knowing this information may cause more trouble than anything else, Kakashi said sternly. Why don't we like the sound of this? Asked the Sakura clone, defending both herself and the original. I promise, Sakura said nervously before swallowing, her previous excitement seemingly pushed to the side for the time being. All right then, Kakashi began his explanation. The way shadow clones were used during the war was for information gathering more than anything else. This was due to the fact that, when a clone disperses, the information they have gained during this time will be transferred back to the original. It's also useful for gaining experience. For example, if you and your clone trained for an hour, when the clone dispelled, you would gain 2 hours worth of experience. I understand why you don't want Naruto and Sasuke to use the technique this way, Sakura said, realizing the consequences. Both of her teammates would already train themselves to the bone on a regular basis. Doubling it would transfer the mental strain as well as the fatigue, potentially putting them out of commission for some time. And I'd like them to discover this trait for themselves. Think of it as if I wanted to test them. Now, since you are the most sensible of the three, I believe it would be worthwhile for your clone to continue your studies while you begin to press forward in other fields. Don't think I haven't noticed the fact that you haven't done much taijutsu training over the past couple of weeks. I believe it's time we rectified that, said Kak. Sakura's face lowered slightly as the shadow clone placed a hand on her shoulder. I wish you luck, the clone said before handing over the original to Kakashi. Sakura could only swallow nervously as she slipped into her stance while Kakashi pulled out his porn. But the pink-haired girl knew it didn't matter. You want me to fight? Hanabi, Hinata wondered, unsure what her father expected of her. It's been a while since I've been able to evaluate your combat skills, Hayashi said with a curt nod. Even though I will most likely be training your cousin, Neji, I would like to get an idea of how you will perform in the exams. But, father, wouldn't it be better if I fought Neji Nai-san? Perhaps, Hayashi replied, but I believe such a battle would be best saved for the exam. He didn't say anything about wanting to see how capable Hinata was. When she wanted to be, Hanabi was a formidable foe, but Hinata was easily in her league. She was nowhere to be found at Neji's. As for your own abilities, don't you think a spar with your sister would help you prepare for what was to come? Hinata paused at those words because she had no idea what lay ahead. Her first round match would be against Ino, the ever-popular Kunoichi, before she would face either of her teammates who had won the first round. Shino had her money, despite her refusal to admit it. Are you feeling well? Hayashi inquired after his daughter's hesitation, concerned that it was due to the dark seal engraved on her skin. Yes, father, Hinata said, returning to attention. Good, I'll tell your sibling to meet me at the main sparring grounds in half an hour. I believe you'll have enough time to properly prepare yourself, Hayashi said as he walked away from his eldest daughter. Hinata, on the other hand, remained rooted to the spot. Her thoughts returned to the last time she and Hanabi had battled, and how she had come out on the losing end. She remembered the elders' expressions, how they were almost disgusted that the person who was supposed to be the clan heir had been toppled so easily by a child half her size. Her thoughts quickly turned to Naruto, and she couldn't help but wonder what he'd think if she lost this upcoming battle. While Hinata was almost certain that the blonde would be supportive, a menacing little voice in the back of her head warned her that if she lost, there would be no comforting words from Naruto and she would find herself looking at his back as he walked away from her fallen figure. Hinata clenched her fist and declared silently that she would not back down. Sakura frowned as she waited for Sasuke to return with their blonde teammate. It had taken her an eternity to drag the obstinate Uchiha from his bed, the boy having apparently fallen asleep due to the strenuous training he had been doing, and only then had she realized that they still needed to grab Naruto. Kakashi-sensei had told her to return to their usual meeting place once she had finished her taijutsu session with him. Her entire body ached from it, and she couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy knowing that her two male teammates possessed natural body strength that she would have to work for. However, she wasn't sure she could complain too much because she was certainly stronger than her two teammates in other areas. Though Sasuke, and even Naruto, had brains and could use them when necessary, it was no secret that she was far smarter than the two of them combined. Then there was the fact that she had near-perfect control, something that neither of the boys had yet achieved. She wasn't the strongest by any means, but she also wouldn't describe herself as weak. The cherry blossom-haired girl sighed and looked over the bridge. In any case, where was Kakashi? He'd already been late once today, and Sakura wasn't sure she'd be patient if he was late again for the meeting he'd scheduled for 7 o'clock in the evening. She looked down at the slightly wavy water. It was a pity that shadow clones couldn't be used to replenish her chakra reserves. She almost hit herself for being so stupid as soon as the thought crossed her mind. Of course, they could be used to replenish her chakra reserves, as creating one required a significant amount of chakra. They couldn't help with control, but given that chakra control exercises had been her best bet for exhausting her reserves up to this point, she was relieved to learn that she had another option. Though Wonder Naruto adored them, they were incredible, even if the blonde didn't understand half of their practical applications. Sakura was startled to hear Sasuke and Naruto's footsteps approaching her. She must have lost track of time while thinking about shadow clones. "Hey, Naruto." She acknowledged the boy's presence awkwardly. He responded with a similarly awkward greeting. Since the non-blonde teammates heard Shikamaru's revelation, things had been awkward between the trio of teammates. So, where exactly is Kakashi-sensei? Sasuke wondered, clutching his brow. Sakura frowned deeply. He didn't appear to be in good health. The Sharingan and bloodshot eyes were not a good combination. "Right here." Their sensei's familiar muffled voice rang out through the area, as he appeared seemingly out of nowhere, the only indication that he had not been present the entire time being thin wisps of white smoke floating away from his backside. "Good, everyone's finally here," Sakura said dryly, almost sarcastically. After a day of exhausting herself by using shadow clones, she was ready to collapse after the most vicious taijutsu beatdown she had ever received. She was irritated by the fact that Naruto and Kakashi seemed unconcerned about this. Sasuke probably looked worse than she did. "Would you mind telling us, Kakashi-sensei, why you summoned us here?" "Man, what's gotten into you, Sakura? You're in such a hurry all of a sudden," Kakashi said softly. "Anyway, we're going on a mission." "Really?" asked Naruto, his eyes sparkling with delight. "I grabbed a couple of scrolls," Kakashi said, reaching into his jounin vest and pulling out a few scrolls. "It's up to you guys to choose which one you want to do," he continued, handing them to Sakura. "But remember, with most of the other genin busy preparing for the exams, there has been a buildup of D-ranked missions." "End of day D-ranked missions. Oh joy," Sasuke said, sarcasm oozing from his lips. Now, don't be like that, Sasuke, because there's a way we can turn this into a training exercise," Kakashi said, piqued their interests. "One of the scrolls I gathered was for babysitting for a merchant family, while the other is from the Akamichi family, many of whom have come down with something and need someone to wait tables at their restaurant. We're going to do both missions at the same time as a training exercise." "What? How?" exclaimed Naruto, who had no idea. "We're going to use shadow clones," Sasuke correctly predicted. "Correct," Kakashi said. "As a result of this, Sasuke, you can put your current conditioning on hold until tomorrow morning." Sasuke could say he'd never been happier to have the chakra removed from his eyes, the red fading away before they returned to their natural black. Blinking a few times, he tried to readjust to having his normal eyes back, even if it was only for a short time. While this isn't so much a training exercise for Naruto because he can create dozens of clones, each of you is to create a single clone and send it off to do the babysitting job. One that my own shadow clone will join you on, Kakashi explained. "Wait, Sakura can now make shadow clones?" asked Naruto, looking over at his pink-haired teammate, who only responded by sticking her tongue out playfully. "While that is going on, the three of you will wait tables, and at the end of the night when everything is over, you'll get paid for both missions and can head home with some extra money in your pocket," Kakashi explained. "Then starting tomorrow, while we are doing our training sessions, we will have clones go and do missions so that the higher-ranking ninja aren't suddenly found hunting for Tora." The three genin couldn't help but smile. It opened up so many doors that the other genin teams couldn't. They wouldn't have to spend endless hours painting houses or doing something similar, but instead would be working on their individual and team strengths. This was definitely something they could work with. Hanabi jumped off the ground with a small gasp of pain before skidding to a halt, quickly getting to her feet to face the next round of attacks. Because Hinata wasn't attacking right now, she assumed she was being granted a brief reprieve by her older sister, whether out of pity or to brag about how much better she was. Those who had decided to watch the fight could not have been more surprised by the outcome. Hanabi had won their previous fight with a dominant performance. This time, however, Hinata was in command of the fight. All hesitation and remorse had vanished, and many imagined that the once timid girl could now go toe-to-toe with Neji. Hanabi, clearly tired of being on the back foot, let her emotions take over as she charged forward in a desperate attempt to regain ground on her older sister. Hanabi thrust her palm forward, ready to strike, until Hinata knocked it away at the last second, opening up the younger girl's ribs before driving a fist square into the open area. While many of the Hyuga's onlookers were perplexed as to why a Juken strike hadn't been launched from the sickening crack, they couldn't deny that the attack had been effective. Hanabi's scream cut through the walls as she cradled her broken ribs in agony, tears streaming down her face. Unfortunately, Hinata's fist smacked into her nose, sending a wave of blood flying through the air as she collapsed to the ground. "Hinata, that's enough," exclaimed Hayashi from his vantage point. His words fell on deaf ears as Hinata raised her hand again, this time ready to deliver a Juken strike. As her strike descended, black markings danced across her skin. Hanabi managed a feeble defense, but the result was her forearm taking the blow, her bones breaking with a horrifying crunch. Hinata didn't slow down as she raised her arm again, intending to finish this fight like a shinobi would on the battlefield. She couldn't be weak if she didn't do it. Not in front of her family, anyway. Never in the presence of Naruto. Hayashi jumped in and intervened as Hinata's palm descended towards Hanabi's chest. Within seconds, the clan heir's father had knocked out her unsuspecting form, and all she could see was black. Hayashi summoned 2 members of the branch family to quickly transport Hanabi to the hospital, as he could only imagine the amount of damage her petite body had sustained at the hands of her sister. Hayashi walked through the corridors until he arrived at Hinata's room and placed the unconscious girl on her bed, the black markings having retreated within the seal. Looking down on her, even though she appeared calm and peaceful for the time being, he was well aware that the darkness within her was spreading and that she needed an outlet to release this menacing aura. Otherwise, no one knew what would happen. It wasn't too late for the members of Team 7, who walked away from their mission with their pay stubs in hand and a couple of tips from customers for their hard work. At the very least, Sakura and Sasuke had been given advice, Naruto had not. "Nice work today, you 3. We'll meet up tomorrow at 9 o'clock, where we'll once again send shadow clones off to do jobs while we catch up on our training," Kakashi said as he walked steadily behind his genin. "Is that 9 o'clock normal time or Kakashi time?" Sasuke asked, a grin on his face. Despite the fact that Kakashi's teaching had improved by leaps and bounds, it came as no surprise that he was still late to nearly every meeting. "Well, if I'm not there, I imagine you 3 can find some way to pass the time," Kakashi said before leaping away faster than the 3 could see. Once again, this had not changed over time. "What do you want to do tomorrow while we wait for Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto asked, putting his hands behind his head. "We need to get started on collaboration attacks," Sasuke said. "In what way, Sasuke-kun?" Sakura inquired. "At the moment, I'd say that all of us could go one-on-one against any genin that Konoha has to offer, as well as some of the other countries," Sasuke said, and Sakura couldn't help but smile at the subtle compliment. "Together, I think we'd have a good chance of taking on a couple of Chunin." Sasuke remembered taking out one of the demon brothers, who was supposed to be a Chunin-ranked shinobi, but Kiba had given him a tougher time than that missing nin had. "Should we ask Kakashi-sensei for a couple more jutsu tomorrow? Something that will work well together?" Naruto wondered. "Well, Naruto, you and I could make do with what we've got," Sakura said. "Both of the jutsu that Kakashi-sensei taught us should work well together. All we have to do now is practice so that our attacks are in sync." Sasuke was about to say something when he was interrupted by a vision of himself approaching them. That is, his clone, who was followed by the rest of the surrogates who had participated in the babysitting mission. He could hear the Naruto clone chanting a mantra from where he was, something about too many diapers. He wasn't sure, and he didn't want to be. "What happened?" Naruto inquired of his clone. "There was poop everywhere," exclaimed the clone, dropping into a fetal position and rocking back and forth. Yes, Sasuke would have preferred to remain unaware of the situation. Hinata's fingers dug deep into her palms as she stared at the girl in front of her, almost slack-jawed. "As you can see, it will be some time before your sister recovers properly," Hayashi said, his voice trembling with emotion. "It may be several days before she awakens, and while her body will naturally recover over time, you must do your best to regain your sister's trust, which may take months or even years." I understand," Hinata said respectfully as she bowed her head to her father. "How could she have allowed this to happen?" Was she really that weak that she couldn't even save her own loved ones? Had this happened to any other person or for any other reason, I might have sought punishment for the perpetrator, Hayashi said. However, because I organized the fight in the first place, some of the blame must fall on my shoulders. However, this does not absolve you of your actions. I'm sorry, father, Hinata said, her face lowering as tears threatened to fall. While the words were formal, such an outpouring of emotion from both parties was unusual for the Hyuga clan. For the next week, you will not be allowed to leave the clan's grounds. You will not be allowed to see your sensei, teammates, or anyone else. How you spend the majority of your time, I will leave to you, but you shall report to the sparring grounds at noon each day where I will spar with you. Beware that I shall not be going easy on you, in order to both train and punish you, Hayashi said monotonously, knowing that making the punishment too severe could have further implications. Keep in mind that I am restraining myself in order to avoid impeding you in the exams, but I will punish you further if your performance during them is not satisfactory. Hinata remained silent as she lifted her head ever so slightly, allowing her gaze to fall upon her sister's broken form, the one she had created like some kind of wild beast. She wanted to say she couldn't remember what had happened, but the memory was burned into her brain like a brand on livestock. I understand if you want to stay here alone and apologize to your sister, but I expect you to be back at the compound by the time I return. There are several people I need to speak with, Hayashi said as he turned to leave. No more words were spoken as he exited the room, closing the door behind him and exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Staying in the same spot for a moment, he heard a brief thud from inside before his oldest daughter's wailing, her grief fully expressing itself now that she was alone. He began to walk down the hospital corridor with a soft sigh, knowing there was nothing else he could do for the time being. Sabaku no Gaara was not a patient person. The unquenchable bloodlust that was now coursing through his veins irritated him, the irritating sensation having achieved the distinction of being one of the very few things that could get under his skin. Gaara had previously felt a stronger desire to kill, to obliterate, but nothing had ever come close to this strange sensation. It all started when he arrived in Konoha to take the Chunin exams. Something, he couldn't remember what, had set him off on his first day, and his blood seemed to boil hotter with each passing second after that. His teeth seemed to grind more violently against each other, and perhaps worst of all, the beast within him, his mother, was angrier than it had ever been. Throughout his life, she would request the blood of a random person, ranging from a random jounin to a young academy student, and Gaara was always eager to comply. This time, however, no matter who he killed, who he attacked, the hungry feeling that he discovered his mother radiating through him was unsatisfied. It had vanished for a few days when he went into the forest for the second part of the exam. He'd gotten to feast on the blood of many things there, many large and strange creatures, and even the occasional genin. But the feeling had returned with a vengeance the moment he left the forest. Tonight was one of those nights when the urge was particularly strong. Back in Suna, his sleepless nights were among the most memorable of his life. Nobody was ever awake, and he relished the sensation. Absolute silence, total darkness, and a slew of unwitting victims. And they gave him time to think. The setting of the sun was one of the things he looked forward to the most during each meaningless day. However, since his arrival in the village of the leaves, the darkness of night had become far less of a refuge from the emptiness that was his unvalidated existence, and far more of a terrifying trap in which he had no choice but to feel unbelievably bloodthirsty for hours on end. Of course, he'd tried killing, having consumed countless Konoha residents with his sand, but he also knew he couldn't let himself go. His father would have his head if he made Suna look any worse. He clenched his fists in frustration as he looked out the window of the hotel room where he was staying. He never slept. As much as he wanted to appease his mother's hunger and relieve himself of the strain he was feeling, he knew he had to get through this, one hellish night at a time. With the dawn of a new day, Team 7 found themselves waiting in the training area designated by their sensei the night before. Needless to say, the genin were not surprised when he failed to arrive on time. Okay, Sakura, you were saying last night that the two techniques you and Naruto shared could be used as a collaboration attack before we got cut off by us, Sasuke said, unsure how to refer to the shadow clones they had walked into. Well, considering the amount of chakra Naruto can use in a single technique, the D-ranked jutsu Kakashi taught him could easily be classified as C, if not B-ranked, Sakura explained. Remember how we were taught in class which elemental jutsu were weak and strong against one another. I may have dozed off in that class, Naruto admitted sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. Figures, Sakura muttered, shaking her head. Well, Iruka stated that wind is weak against fire, so instead of competing, we'll stand side by side. And while you pour your chakra into the attack, I'll add my jutsu, and in theory, the small vortex you create should fuel my fire. We're going to make a flamethrower, exclaimed Naruto. I figure this is only in theory, Sasuke said, taking on the role of the wet blanket. Several things can go wrong with this scenario, the most significant of which is that Sakura's fire is extinguished before it can be fully integrated into the attack. In that regard, we can't have you going all out because this is a team attack. You can't extinguish Sakura's fire with your wind. Alright then, should we give it a shot? Naruto exclaimed, practically bouncing up and down with excitement. Well, you start, Dobe, and I'll keep an eye on you from a distance and tell you to adjust if necessary, Sasuke said as he moved to the side, his red irises flashing in anticipation. The last thing he wanted was to be near this experiment in case it went horribly wrong. In other words, he wanted a front row seat. After you, Naruto, Sakura said, waving her hand. Nodding, the blonde genin turned towards the river, careful not to scorch the forest with this attack. Naruto drew his head back slightly after quickly going through the necessary hand seals. Futon, K's no Areikbai, exclaimed Naruto as gale force winds burst from his lips. What should have been a simple technique was turned into something ridiculous simply because, well, it was Naruto, as both Sakura and Sasuke predicted. Sakura, who was standing beside him, began to go through her necessary hand seals. Katen Kasai Nager, exclaimed the pink-haired teen as a small trail of fire escaped her lips, but it was quickly extinguished by the sheer power of Naruto's jutsu. Naruto, tone it down a notch, Sasuke said from the sidelines. This time, Sakura, you'll need to put a little more effort into it. Naruto made the necessary adjustments, while Sakura paused her technique and concentrated on her breathing. She could feel Naruto's wind had slowed by 5 knots, but it would still be difficult to combine her miniature attack with something of that magnitude. Sakura molded the chakra within by performing the proper hand seals before unleashing her technique. The outcome was immediate. A torrent of fire burst forward, covering 100 feet and eroding Naruto's control over the wind. Sakura could only stare, wide-eyed, as she realized the magnitude of such an attack. She could see Sasuke a good 20 feet away, doing his best to shield himself from the heat. Meanwhile, Naruto was having the time of his life as he began steadily pumping more and more chakra into the attack, increasing its width and length with each second. Sasuke couldn't believe how powerful this technique was from his vantage point. He reasoned that if he used his Grand Fireball technique to counter it, his own attack would be swamped unless he poured every ounce of chakra he had into it. However, knowing how long Naruto's chakra battery could last, he would be easily overpowered in a matter of seconds. Kakashi's fabled book was lowered into the trees nearby as he watched the torrent of flames that passed over the river. Based on its size, the attack could consume an entire battalion of bandits if they were caught off guard, an enemy camp reduced to ashes in under a minute. He'd have to show this to Jiraiya at some point, though he had a sneaking suspicion that the Toad Sage was watching from somewhere nearby. But that was a long shot when there was research to be done. Knowing how long Naruto could likely keep this up, he decided to step in and start the day's training before they decided to test the heat against some trees to see what effect it would have on them. Based on his recent luck, the group of trees they would target would be the one in which he was currently hiding. That could never end well. Strike with greater ferocity, Hayashi yelled as he deflected another poor attempt from his daughter. The calm that she had displayed so ruthlessly against Hanabi was all but gone, a mere shadow of it remaining. She nodded, acknowledging his instructions, but did not appear to react in any other way. Her form was similar, and Hayashi was confident that the match up until this point would have been more even if he hadn't used his Byakugan. It was difficult for him to admit it because Hanabi had always been his pride and joy, but seeing his eldest daughter move the way she did the other day had sent a shiver down his spine, though that was quickly replaced by concern for his youngest's well-being. Hayashi knew that the occasion had been one of the rare occasions when Hinata was at her best. The clan head knew his daughter had great potential, but she never seemed to be able to realize it because she was too fragile. He suspected she had been angry about something, which had pushed her over the edge. He remembered his wife exhibiting similar behavior before she died. With his counterattack, he easily swatted away a sharp jab at the tenketsu located by his right shoulder blade while sealing off the chakra in Hinata's left hand. "Where is the strength you were using before?" Hayashi boldly inquired. "Would you like to humiliate the Hyuga by competing in the tournament?" And no, father, she gritted her teeth, an unusual gesture for the reserved girl, as she tried not to lose her willpower. As a result, the seal would feed on her darker thoughts until it overtook her and she did something she would later regret. I can't rely on its power any longer, not after hurting so many people so many times. Then get up and fight, the clan head practically yelled, a chilling gesture made more chilling by the fact that he had kept his cool the entire time. Hinata attacked his stomach without saying anything. It wasn't a Juken strike, but the same technique had worked well on Hanabi. He, on the other hand, easily caught her outstretched hand. He began crushing it with precise pressure, not nearly enough to break her hand but more than enough to make her body writhe in pain. Tears streamed down Hinata's cheeks, and instead of breaking free from her father's grip on her hand, she found herself apologizing. I apologize. For what? He inquired sharply. Remember that I am not your sister, and you can't let your dissatisfaction with what you did in the past get in the way of the present. Hinata stuttered a little, words spilling from her open mouth, but not fully processed by her brain. As the pain subsided, her fingers, which were still being held by her father, began to numb slightly. She stood up a little taller, her composure stronger, as the tears stopped falling. I understand, father, the Hyuga said as she slid her hands out of her father's, meeting little resistance as she fell into a slightly less sloppy stance. Hayashi's lips parted in a ghostly smile as he noticed a strong fire burning away within her lavender eyes. He had something to work with now. This is so boring, Iro Senin, Naruto sighed, staring dispassionately at his current sensei. Well, what would you rather be doing right now, brat? An enraged Jiraiya asked. The kid hadn't learned how to be quiet in the few training sessions they'd had. Would you rather eat ramen or yell about becoming Hokage one day? I know, Naruto said, biting his lip in frustration and ignoring the slight jab. I just don't think I can take another demonic chakra theory lesson. Well, if you actually paid attention to what I was saying, you might learn something, Jiraiya said, crossing his arms and attempting to appear unimpressed. How come Minato never interrupted my lessons like that? Who is Minato? Naruto inquired, the name sounding strangely familiar to him. You mean you don't know the first name of the man who sealed the Kyuubi in you? Jiraiya's brow furrowed, recalling the brat shouting something about idolizing the man. Do you mean you taught the yondaime? Naruto's jaw had made contact with the ground. The gears in his head had started to turn at the mention of his first name. But the genin had dismissed it as a coincidence that the yondaime and Jiraiya's student shared the same first name. First Kakashi-sensei, now you. Is everyone who has taught me connected to the yondaime in some way? It depends if your academy instructor was Kotsu or not. Jiraiya chuckled as Naruto shook his head. I'm guessing the old bat has retired by now. So, can you tell me more about the yondaime? Naruto inquired. Though the man was partially to blame for the young boy's death, the blonde held him in high regard. Going to the library and trying to read some stupid textbook beats asking Jiraiya about him and getting a first-hand report. Perhaps if you actually learn what I'm trying to teach you, smirked Jiraiya, knowing that the blonde would blindly obey him from now on. Fine, Naruto said, sticking his tongue out. Before Jiraiya could finish his lesson, he grabbed Naruto with such force that the blonde couldn't believe it, as they moved out of the way of a sand tendril that slammed down in the spot they were standing. The lesson is over, kid, it appears we have company. What the hell was that? Exclaimed Naruto, realizing that being caught off guard could have killed him. That attack wasn't meant to injure someone. Perhaps by showing you what I'm actually capable of, you'll come to realize just how great I am. Jiraiya boasted as he helped Naruto back to his feet. They could feel the menacing aura draw closer and closer until the red-haired Gaara stepped into the opening. Oh, the Ikeabai's Jinchuriki. I was wondering if he would have reacted to your chakra from the other day. Wait, so there are more people like me with crazy big monsters in them? Wondered Naruto, who had never heard of any other village-destroying monster besides the one tucked away in his seal. Kid, meet what you could have been, Jiraiya said as he pointed at the enemy. Mother, demands blood, Gaara said slowly, almost possessed. What the hell is he talking about? Asked Naruto, who was feeling a little more on edge at the moment. Unlike the masters who helped create the seal that keeps the Kyuubi at bay, the Suna Seal Masters, if they can even be called that, are pretty shoddy with their work. Jiraiya explained as tendrils of sand began to float around Gaara menacingly. Fortunately for them, I'm going to fix that. Mother wants your blood. I'll give it to her, Gaara said coldly, his eyes unblinking as he launched his first attack. I wonder what Jiraiya is teaching Naruto. Sakura wondered as she went about her training. Probably something better than this, Sasuke replied, his face twisted. Come on you two, no slacking off, Kakashi said, standing nearby and watching the two genin continue their squats while holding the large boulders atop their shoulders. Nothing that Naruto is going through right now could possibly be worse. You should pay more attention. Jiraiya smirked as a kunai with an explosive tag slapped on it exploded a foot or two away from the redhead's feet. Surprisingly, the sand that the boy had previously tried to crush Naruto with rose into the air and shielded him from the small explosion. Mother desires the blood of the blonde one, Gaara said, pointing a frail finger at Naruto before clutching the air in his palm and looking at Jiraiya. However, I will crush you first for impeding my progress. No way, Naruto snarled as he threw his hands into his favorite hand seal, 30 or so copies of himself forming on his command. Kage Bunshin, your battle is with me, I have this Iro Senin. Relax, brat, the pervert said, laughing slightly. I'll handle it no problem. But I don't think you're really prepared for this ye. The man never got to finish his sentence because a torrential downpour of sand erupted from the ground and devoured him whole. Just as Naruto was about to react with his clones, the sand around his sensei exploded outwards, leaving the blonde in awe of Jiraiya's strength. He had no idea what kind of strength the Sannin possessed aside from the little demonstration they had the other day, where they had managed to catch the pervert unaware in the little training Kakashi had conjured up. Didn't I tell you to relax, said Jiraiya, reappearing unharmed, the sand that had previously encapsulated him dissipating. That's the first time anyone has gotten away from me. I'll enjoy delivering your blood to mother, Gaara said coldly as the sand around him began to dance to his command. The white-haired man vanished completely from sight before he could make it destroy the insects in his path, and he was suddenly thankful for his sand shield as a monstrous attack nearly took his head off. Automatic defense, muttered Jiraiya, leaping out of harm's way for the time being. It shouldn't be too difficult to get around, I've faced worse. Meanwhile, Naruto only blinked in confusion a few times as he tried to figure out how fast the Toad Sage had just gone. The ninja had crossed the distance between himself and Gaara in the time it took to close his eyelids, as well as attacking the redhead with a powerful blow, though the blonde figured that attack hadn't even scratched the surface of Jiraiya's abilities. Though Naruto had decided to be content with watching the Toad Sannin's handiwork, it was unsettling to see what was undoubtedly his most useful technique swept aside like child's play. Jiraiya was probably extremely strong, having trained the fourth, but this Gaara kid didn't appear to be a pushover either. So it appears that this guy is only using the sand in his gourd, Jiraiya said thoughtfully before turning to Naruto, who was not paying attention to him. I'm trying to teach you something here, brat. Okay, so this creepy guy can only control sand, so he carries it around in this massive thing on his back, Naruto said, echoing Jiraiya's words. How does it help us? What do you think? Jiraiya inquired, his gaze drawn to the motionless figure of Gaara, with the redhead just standing there staring at them. The pervert was fairly certain he was plotting something. That information might have helped us if we could get within 2 feet of him, but as it stands, it's not going to do us much good, Naruto admitted, knowing that fighting the insane genin in front of him would be difficult. How much sand do you think the kid has in that gourd? The Sannin asked, keeping his voice low so the other Jinchuriki didn't hear him. A lot, Naruto replied. Did you see how much he used to catch you? The blonde Jinchuriki threw himself backwards as a large sand tendril crushed the spot where he had been standing. Jumping to his feet, he was relieved to see Jiraiya a little ahead of him, hoping that the experienced ninja could protect him from the next blow. He'd just barely gotten out of the way this time. Correct, brat, Jiraiya said, returning his slightly muffled voice to the blonde and continuing their conversation. And it's pretty fast. But I'm faster. If you can create just enough of a distraction for him to focus on attacking you while he keeps the majority of the sand in that gourd of his, I can sweep in and take care of our little sand problem. That makes sense, Naruto agreed, realizing that the man couldn't have risen to his position without a knack for strategy. It's a cheap shot, but this kid has a monster sealed inside him just like you. Except he appears to be a lot more unstable, and it's not worth the risk for us to draw this out fully, Jiraiya said. Now to your little diversion stunt, but don't get too close to him because you don't want him to try to crush you with his sand. And don't overdo it either because we want most of his sand to stay in the gourd rather than having it defend him. Gotcha, Naruto said with a nod, his hands forming a hand seal. Kage Bunshin, exclaimed Bunshin. Only 2 clones of the blonde were summoned, as opposed to the few dozen clones that usually appeared whenever he used said jutsu. The 3 Narutos all ran towards Gaara, passing the Toad Sage before coming to a halt a few meters away from the psychopath, each with an unusually serious expression on their faces. while the real Naruto took a moment to concentrate and allow his hands to flash through a number of hand seals. The two clones emptied their weapon pouches by throwing their contents as soon as Jinchuriki. As Gaara seemed to have pure bloodlust for the blonde, a thin wall of sand rose almost lazily to block the weapons. For the umpteenth time that day, he cackled, "Mother screams for your blood, Uzumaki. I'll enjoy ripping you apart, limb from limb, as my existence is finally validated. Meet what you could have become." Jiraiya's words played in the back of Naruto's mind as he tried not to look at the boy in front of him in bewilderment. They were both the same age, had demons within them, and were both sacrificed for the greater good of their villages. As they looked the redhead down, horror ran through his eyes, those lonely eyes, that soulless expression. Was this really what he could have become? With a jolt, he returned to reality as his chakra built up, the blonde's only response to the younger boy being to fire off his jutsu. Futon, K's no Wadekibai. Strong winds protruding from Naruto's lips blew all of the boy's sand away with ease, but Naruto frowned when he saw the sand levitate again after the winds from his jutsu had passed it. He kept a close eye on the redhead as he observed the sand surrounding the Jinchuriki, which was now swirling around him with greater intensity. Recognizing the need to be cautious and to calm the boy, the blonde retreated to the trees, while his clones followed in unison. They both tried, but Gaara was able to snag one and literally bury it under a mountain of sand. Naruto tensed his face as he jumped from tree to tree, just out of Gaara's reach. It had not been a pleasant experience for his clone. He assumed that being suffocated was never a good way to go, but being crushed by sand was probably the worst way to go. And he was nearly certain the sand was stained with blood. He shook his head and pushed all thoughts of his clone's horrific death away, knowing that he couldn't allow himself to be distracted by such thoughts on the battlefield. But why did it feel like he'd just gone through it all himself? No, he needed to concentrate on Gaara and keep the boy at bay while also preventing him from approaching. However, that was easier said than done. A kunai didn't bother the boy, whereas anything stronger had him calling on half the sand in his gourd. "Alright, so I'm going to have to do something completely unconventional," Naruto said, not realizing the irony in his own statement. His range of techniques and jutsu, on the other hand, left a lot to be desired, and while it would have been worthwhile against a much weaker opponent, he was up against someone whose guard could protect them without even lifting a single finger. Naruto knew he could summon a toad to help him, but he knew that as soon as he started whipping through hand seals, Gaara would be on him and his concentration would be shot. Summoning a tadpole would be a complete waste of time, leaving him vulnerable to what could be a life-ending opportunity. "Got it," he said, returning his fingers to their patented seal as 20 clones of himself appeared around him. "You just postponed the inevitable, Uzumaki," Gaara said, pushing his sand forward, intent on devouring the original and offering the blonde's blood to his mother. Naruto and his clones circled Gaara, trying not to get caught in the death trap that Gaara possessed. Naruto was surprisingly calm as he positioned himself, despite the fact that a single misstep would mean the end of his life. The sand was no longer coming at him, and he hoped Gaara was perplexed by the scene around him, but he couldn't read a single expression from his fellow Jinchuriki. Despite his calm demeanor, Gaara was intrigued as he found himself surrounded by a swarm of clones. More sand began to leak from his gourd as he prepared to counter whatever futile plan Naruto had devised, because nothing the boy did would matter. "Futon, K's no Wadekibai," exclaimed the Narutos as they plowed through the hand seals at breakneck speed. Gaara almost laughed at the amusing sight, as his prey appeared to have run out of abilities to use. He hoped that Mother would still find the blood valuable. Naruto smiled inwardly as he didn't see the sand strike out against all of his clones, implying that Gaara was underestimating him. As he and his clones sent the various wind currents, they all pointed to the same location. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was watching his godson from the sidelines with interest. He was going to make sure the boy was not harmed, even though he could have ended the fight almost immediately. But Naruto wanted to prove something against a psychopath. Typical. This attack, on the other hand, made him raise an eyebrow because, instead of all of the wind torrents aimed directly at Gaara, they were all blowing roughly 3 feet to the right of where the Jinchuriki stood. With all of the clones in a circle, one of the attacks would be absorbed into the one ahead of it, and the resulting combined force of the wind would then join the one ahead of that, and so on. The final result. Gaara was now in the midst of an ever-increasing vortex. Gaara, realizing his error as a result of his arrogance, tried to impale a number of the clones with his sand, but it was ineffective because the grains of sand were sucked upwards. But that wasn't his only problem. The wind current circling him had created a vacuum effect, slowly depriving him of oxygen. Thankfully, it wasn't a complete vacuum effect. There was no danger of him passing out due to a lack of oxygen. but the low pressure around him began to make him feel dizzy. Lightheadedness is never a good feeling when you have a 12-story demon constantly playing with your thoughts. Naruto squinted his eyes as he saw more grains of sand begin to peel off Gaara's skin, indicating that there had been a second level of defense that had been hidden behind the protective barrier. The sound of clothing shredding went unnoticed as Gaara's tunic was ripped from his body by the ever-increasing wind strength, making Naruto wonder how powerful this technique was. He also wanted to see if Sakura could light it up with her fire jutsu, as she had done earlier with the collaboration attack. A fiery tornado of death. That would be fantastic. His daydreaming caused him to miss an important piece of information, which thankfully Jiraiya did not miss when he saw the seal that held the Shukaku inside Gaara. The seal's overall construction was shoddy at best. Suna was never truly good at Fuinjutsu in general. But this was ridiculous. Because Naruto was able to remove the sand from Gaara's body, the seal had quickly become a target. And from what he could see, it was a seal with an even number of ink strokes. So he knew exactly how to stop this kid. Purple flames appeared on his fingertips as he flexed his fingers, preparing to finish this with a single move. "Stop your jutsu, Naruto," he yelled as he prepared to enter the fray. He estimated that it would take 2, maybe 3 seconds for his sand to fall down and conceal the seal once more. There is plenty of time. Knowing the pervert had a plan, Naruto halted his technique and dismissed all of his clones. The vortex, on the other hand, was not going anywhere anytime soon. "It's not going to stop," exclaimed Naruto as he began to panic. "And this is why you always practice a jutsu before using it in the field," Jiraiya muttered, shrugging his shoulders and bending his knees as he prepared to spring forward. It was just a wind vortex circling at the same rate as a tornado. Nothing was too difficult for him. Jiraiya pushed his way through the swirling vortex at breakneck speed, not pausing for breath. "Gogi Fin!" exclaimed Jiraiya, slamming his fingers around Gaara's seal, a pain cry escaping the redhead's mouth. Having never been injured before, the pain he was feeling now was crippling. His eyes became heavy, unconsciousness quickly passed through his system, and Gaara of the desert slept for the first time in his life. Without a constant force of chakra being pumped into it, and with the conditions being relatively calm, there was nothing to fuel the attack, and it soon vanished completely from sight. "What did you do to him, Ero Sennin?" Naruto asked, visibly relaxed now that the threat of death was no longer hanging over his head. "I put a seal on top of his seal," Jiraiya explained, which only confused the blonde-haired boy. "To put it simply, I disrupted his chakra network by preventing Shukaku from exerting as much influence over Gaara's thoughts and chakra output." "Wow, I had no idea you could do stuff like that," Naruto exclaimed, taken aback by his new discovery. "Trust me, kid, that's just scratching the surface," Jiraiya joked before turning his head to see Naruto's 2 teammates. "It appears that we have some additional company. I guess they're done with whatever Kakashi-sensei was teaching them." Naruto grinned, eager to rejoin his team before noticing Gaara's unconscious body and realizing they couldn't quite abandon him. "Don't worry, you go ahead," Jiraiya said, motioning to the sleeping redhead. "I'll look after him." Naruto quickly made his way to the 2 other genin, muttering a few words of thanks. "Hello, guys. Hey, Naruto. Sasuke and I were going to get some lunch before we resume training later this afternoon. Do you want to come?" Sakura asked, her hands behind her back. "Really?" exclaimed Naruto, as if one of his fantasies had just come true, until he realized that he wouldn't be able to afford much until his next paycheck arrived in a few days. This was clearly visible on his face, prompting Sasuke to speak up. "If you're short on cash, we can shout you with the tips we made last night," Sasuke explained, knowing that the money he and Sakura had earned on the side could easily cover the cost of their teammate. "Really?" said Naruto, his face beaming with eternal joy. Jiraiya couldn't help but grin as he watched the 3 kids dash off for food. He didn't know how much of the battle Naruto's teammates had seen, but they hadn't just conveniently appeared at the end. Brushing it aside, he picked up Gaara's fallen form and slung the unconscious boy over his shoulder. While a part of him wanted to abandon the boy, he was technically an ally of the village, and abandoning him in the middle of the woods would be impolite. He also had to explain to the kid's sensei that things would be very different once the redhead awoke. "What do you most desire?" asked a strange voice Hinata could barely understand. It was almost like a faint whisper, except she was almost certain no one had said anything. "Will it be power, respect, or recognition?" "Nothing," she said aloud before realizing the voice was inside her head. Strange. She was certain that no Yamanaka could have gotten into the compound undetected. "Of course you pretend to hide your deepest desire. Do not be foolish. What do you want, girl?" "A loved one's heart. A peaceful life. What does it matter to you?" Hinata stuttered, not knowing where the sinister voice was coming from. She was reminded of a nightmare she had not long ago, but this voice was far less sinister. It was, however, equally eerie. The silence she received in response to her question did nothing to calm her nerves, and she began to fidget, her fingers encircling each other as her knees rubbed together. Perhaps you want the head of someone who has wronged you, or maybe you just want to show the world that you are not to be trifled with. The voice continued, ignoring her minor protests. No, I don't want to hurt anyone, Hinata admitted. After what had happened to Hanabi, the heiress wanted nothing more than to curl up in a ball and die somewhere. Please respect my privacy. You are pitiful. The voice abruptly shifted to the negative. Give in to your desires and draw strength from them. Without them, you are nothing. Please. Worthless. You are the definition of weak. The voice inside her head almost scoffed. Like lines of oil spilling onto clear snow, dark marks began to run across her pale skin. Leave me alone, she replied, refusing to have anything more to do with the horrifying power she had been cursed with. I'm not going to give in to you. You need our strength. Without it, who will protect your loved ones? Who will love you? It asked, preying on some of her deepest fears. How are you going to gain admiration if you don't have it? No, she sobbed as the black marks faded, a tear falling for every half-inch the girl gained. Please leave me alone. As they waited for their meat to cook, Naruto exclaimed, Kakashi-sensei had you lifting boulders. While Naruto was adamant about going to eat ramen, since Sakura and Sasuke were paying, it was only fair that they chose where they would eat. They had gone to the barbecue joint frequented by Team 10 members at the request of the female teammate. Naruto sat across from Sakura and Sasuke, the pink-haired girl requesting the window seat so she could enjoy the warm air on her skin. Yeah, Sakura whined, rubbing the back of her neck. I understand how it will help us, but it's a significant step up from what we've been doing. This afternoon, I believe he wants us to water walk while carrying these boulders. You guys are having all the fun, Naruto said, slumping his shoulders. I've spent the entire day learning theory about how to use my chakra. Sakura and Sasuke exchanged glances as they noticed the pause in Naruto's brief speech, as well as the way he mentioned using his chakra. They appeared to be getting closer to solving the puzzle that was Naruto, but they still didn't have any fundamental proof. But it was still something. I smell barbecue, a familiar voice from nearby said, prompting Team 7 members to look up. They noticed Chaoji standing there, saliva dripping from his mouth, his gaze fixed on the sizzling meat. We're getting our own food. Chaoji, don't go stealing from others, Shikamaru said as he walked in with his hands in his pockets. Hey, guys, Naruto said cheerfully, glad to see a couple of his friends for the first time since the Chunin exams began. Why did you have to flee like that? Exclaimed Ino as she burst onto the scene. However, before she received an answer, she noticed who her teammates were speaking to and literally couldn't stop herself from leaping at Sasuke with open arms, the black-haired boy completely unprepared for the attack. Nonetheless, at the sound of Ino's voice, someone reacted, and the seal for a Kawarami was performed in less than a second. With her eyes closed, Ino wrapped her arms around someone and began to nuzzle their cheek affectionately, ignoring the small giggles that escaped the lips of those around her. It didn't take her long to realize something was wrong, and she backed away to see that Sasuke had been replaced by her fellow blonde, who sat there with a cheeky smirk on his face. You owe me, Naruto said, turning to face Sasuke, who was now on the other side of the booth and couldn't help but agree that Naruto had saved him this time. Naruto, you baka, yelled an enraged Ino, only for Sakura's hand to shoot upwards and prevent her friend from striking her teammate. Calm down, Ino, she said in her best motherly tone, hoping the blonde didn't do anything stupid. Considering I came here to keep you two company, I'll be off, Shikamaru said, clearly tired. Are you leaving already? Sasuke asked, turning his gaze away from his potential attacker. As inconvenient as it sounds, my father wants to put me through some training exercises. After you defeated Kiba the other day, it appears that every other genin is starting to get some kind of special training, Shikamaru said, running his fingers through his hair. How do you know that? Sakura wondered as she let go of Ino's hand. Kiba's mother drinks with my father on occasion, Shikamaru explained. She was quite loud that night, complaining about how her son isn't fit to compete in the exams if he can't even take on someone who was knocked out in the first round. I'm guessing she wasn't sober at the time, Sasuke said. Indeed, Chaoji said, returning his gaze to the meat in the center of the table before an idea struck him. Hey, Naruto, do you want to spar later? It'd be nice to have a training partner for the afternoon, but we'll limit it to Taijutsu because that's one area I need to improve on. Sounds great, Naruto said with a broad smile. Good. By the way, your meat's burning, Chaoji said, pointing to the center of the grill, where the meat that had been left unattended for a few minutes was emitting thin wisps of black smoke. Shit, yelled Naruto, using his chopsticks to salvage what he could, Sakura and Sasuke following suit. Meanwhile, Choji shook his head from side to side. Such amateurs should not be allowed to handle food in this manner. Are you ready for this? Naruto asked, cracking his knuckles. I understand if you want to back down. Team 7 has recently become pretty badass. No, I'm fine, Choji said, chewing on the last few chips from the packet before scrunching it up and stuffing it into his pocket. So this spar will only involve Taijutsu, Shikamaru explained, temporarily taking on the role of adjudicator. While he had intended to leave when Choji set up this impromptu match, he reasoned that it wouldn't be too difficult to stay a little longer. If that's all, then let's get started. Wait, Sasuke said before either of them could throw a punch. Wouldn't it be unfair for you to see Choji fight if you're fighting him in the Chunin exams? Why? Are you looking to get your hands dirty, Sasuke? Asked Naruto, slightly disappointed that the fight might be called off. Shikamaru's hand thoughtfully grasped his chin as he looked from Choji to the sky several times. Troublesome. I was just on my way home. You can't just leave like that, exclaimed Ino, raising her hands in frustration. Am I the only one on this team who is serious about taking the exams? Hey, I'm taking them seriously, muttered Choji, who had taken advantage of the opportunity to eat some more food. Even if he couldn't use chakra, he'd need all the energy he could get for the fight with the hyperactive blonde. Relax, Ino, Sakura said, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder. Shikamaru said he was going home to do his own training. And Sasuke is correct, even though you guys are teammates. Because Choji and Shikamaru are fighting each other, they need to do their own private training from time to time. TFFT, as if, huffed Ino, blowing a stray strand of her hair up in the air. Shika would most likely stay at home and watch clouds. I'm sure his father wouldn't allow it, Sasuke replied. Though he couldn't recall much about his own father, he knew he was a hard worker. He didn't know the Naras well, but Shikamaru's father couldn't be that dissimilar to his own. Shikaku would simply follow him. Anyway, I'm off, Shikamaru said, relieved to no longer be the center of attention. It doesn't matter if I don't make it through because our performances will now be judged individually. Whatever, Ino said as she waved her teammate away, knowing that with Choji and Naruto fighting, she and Sakura would have Sasuke all to themselves. Given how much training they would have to do each day, she was willing to bet that her favorite Avenger had grown antsy to get away from his bubblegum-haired teammate. Are we ready to start this for real, then? Choji asked, looking around the room before settling his gaze squarely on Naruto. Fine by me, said the blonde genin, restraining himself from throwing his hands into his favorite hand seal. Would you like to call it team? Sure, their owner smirked, red irises span in place, circling black Tomio. Let's get started. Naruto jumped backwards and threw himself into a defensive stance. It was a little jumbled because he hadn't bothered to perfect it during his academy days, but it would suffice. If it had been any other opponent, the Uzumaki would have immediately gone on the offensive, but he was confident that the larger boy would easily shrug off whatever quick blow the blonde might have landed. It turned out to be a good thing as well. Choji had stepped forward and unleashed a powerful haymaker. Naruto narrowly avoided it by a centimeter or two, and the Jinchuriki seized the opportunity to jab the Akamichi squarely in the gut with all his strength. He was surprised, however, to discover that the fatter boy had managed to grab his arm with incredible speed and swing the scrawny blonde aside. Naruto let out a small cry of fear as he found his body bouncing across the ground before righting himself, only to see Choji's foot coming at his head. Despite being able to duck beneath the blow, Naruto's counter was missed as Choji jumped backwards to avoid it. Since when has Choji ever been able to move so fast? Inquired Naruto to no one in particular, clenching his fist and smiling. I guess I won't have to hold back after all. So, Ino Pig, how have you been preparing for the exams? Sakura asked, turning her gaze away from the match. Ino, on the other hand, was unsure how to respond to the question, pausing briefly as she remembered seeing Sasuke and Sakura fight the other day atop the river. She had gone and attempted the feat herself when no one was looking, and after 2 unsuccessful attempts that ruined her outfit, she had a general idea of how to properly water walk. However, using it in a combat situation like Sakura's was still beyond her grasp. Lots, she decided, using the most evasive response she could think of. Sakura knew she needed to change the subject quickly before she could start questioning her further. I see Sasuke is still cold to you. I suppose you haven't worked up the courage to do anything with him yet. It was now Sakura's turn to be quiet. While she wanted to brag about spending a lot of time with Sasuke outside of training hours, she couldn't really say she'd spent those hours researching their other teammate. She couldn't help but wonder how Ino would react. There have been times when it's just been me and him, Sakura said, turning away from the fight just in time for Naruto to kick Choji's feet out from under him before punching the big boned kid's chest with enough force to send him bouncing across the ground. So you spend time with Naruto, and you've changed a lot in the last 6 months, Ino said, flicking her hair behind her ear. Sakura took the words to heart, knowing that it hadn't taken 6 months for her attitude to shift, but rather the few weeks since they were unfairly kicked out of the exam. While they wouldn't be able to become Chunin for another 6 months, she couldn't say she was unhappy with how things had turned out. Whatever the case may be, despite being annoying at times, he's not a bad person, Sakura said as she watched the person of interest avoid a right hook that could have severed his head. You remember that stupid crush he had on you at the academy. How could you even look at him after what he put you through? Ino asked, slightly exaggerating. You could have told him to come and beg at your feet, and he would have. That was then. He could probably go toe-to-toe with Sasuke now. He's changed a lot, Sakura said, trying to recall the last time Naruto had asked her out on a date. Looking back, she couldn't recall ever spending any one-on-one time with the blonde, and she wondered if she should make an effort to get to know him better. Shikamaru's changed a lot as well, Ino said, though she would never say it to the boy's face. Fortunately, the only person present who wasn't in the middle of a fight was Sasuke, who was only a few meters away. She made a mental note to go talk to the dark-haired boy once she was done with Sakura. You'd think the lazy ass would spend all day watching clouds, but he's actually started taking his training a little more seriously, something about his troublesome mother pushing him. Choji, too, he's a lot stronger physically as well. I guess he's a little bulkier than us, Sakura chuckled as she looked toward the boy in question, who had just barely broken free from a lock Naruto had him in with brute strength. Naruto's changes, on the other hand, are a little more shocking. He doesn't yell half as much, and I'm sure if we pushed him, we could get him to ditch that hideous orange jumpsuit of his. Please, Ino scoffed. He's still the same old Naruto. In fact, he's being beaten by Choji right now. Have you been watching the fight at all? Sakura asked, a devilish smile on her face. Ino blinked twice before turning her gaze away from her friend, just in time to see Naruto dodge beneath a jab and drive his fist into Choji's stomach. Naruto had had enough of this contest, springing upwards and driving his knee into Choji's jaw with enough force to put the Akimichi air on his back as Ino's jaw dropped ever so slightly. Told ya, Sakura joked as she approached the battleground to congratulate Naruto on his hard-fought victory. You know, sensei, Jiraiya yawned as he swung in through the Hokage's open window. I'd have thought that by now, someone would have slapped a barrier seal on that or something. From where would you come in then, Jiraiya? The front door. I don't think so. The old man smiled warmly, a bemused twinkle in his eyes. Nice to see you again. We just met a few days ago, Jiraiya said, knowing that the two hadn't seen each other in years before their most recent conversation. So, I'm guessing you want to know how that brief conversation I had with Hayashi went. I wouldn't mind hearing it since I haven't spoken with Hayashi himself in a long time, Sarutobi said with a firm nod. Well, I'm not sure he's gotten around the fact that the seal has a hairpin trigger because his daughter has questionable willpower, but he understood that she needed a bit of space. What was more interesting, though, was the kid I ran into while there. Kid? Asked Sarutobi, nodding as he processed Jiraiya's information. Do you mean Hayashi's eldest son, Hanabi? No, his nephew. He had some strange ideas about fate, but from what I gather, he managed to fight Orochimaru for a while. Jiraiya agreed. It appears that he has the potential to become a strong ninja if he does not allow foolish ideas to cloud his judgment. He's just a genin, Sarutobi replied, inhaling a little smoke from his already lit pipe. Give him time, and I think he'll come around, but he was also the rookie of the year in the academy. And I was dead last, Jiraiya snorted, and you know as well as I do that rankings don't mean shit in the real world. Perhaps, Sarutobi chuckled, but I remember the good old days, when Orochimaru loved to rub it in your face as much as you like to peep on women. Hey, you came along with me from time to time, retorted Jiraiya, recalling fondly how, lacking a father figure, he'd taken to Hiruzen as a father figure, and the two had bonded over a series of peeping sessions by the hot springs. The younger ninja's face became more serious after the two shared a small laugh. How about the old snake? What do you think he's up to? Obviously bad, but I can't help but wonder what he wanted from the Chunin exams. Though it's caused some confusion, I can't see why he put his cursed seal on Hayashi's eldest. Did he want something from any of the other teams? Maybe. Jiraiya speculated. I know that the Kyuubi's brat, Naruto, and the rest of his team got the boot in the early stages of the exams, so maybe he was after a Biju or something. I don't have any A and BU guarding me, and no one will overhear if you mention Naruto's heritage. Sarutobi sighed, returning his attention to the topic at hand. I'm afraid Orochimaru would have claimed Gaara, the Kasuke's son and holder of a noticeably weaker and thus easier to tame Biju. On that note, Jiraiya said, I've currently got him locked up in the basement of one of my old properties, with a promise to explain further. So he doesn't want a Biju, but he strikes one of the Hyuga at random, despite the fact that there are several far more promising ninja with stronger Byakugan than Hinata. Her cousin for one, Sarutobi added thoughtfully. He is taking the exact same exam. He's from the branch family, right? Jiraiya inquired, receiving a small nod from his superior. Orochimaru's curse seal doesn't work like that, at least not in conjunction with the caged bird seal. I've been researching the bastard seal since you dragged me back here, and while I wouldn't rule it out for him to experiment in order to satisfy those sick urges, the two seals would likely fight each other and promptly cause the kid's brain to implode. I wonder what Minato would have thought about all of this. Sarutobi shook his head, trying to calm himself. This situation just didn't make sense. I'd bet good money that the brat would completely screw over Orochimaru's seal within a week, Jiraiya said, trying not to brag as he remembered his talented student's various abilities. Anyway, he decides at random to grab a Byakugan and target a clan head's daughter. It just doesn't add up, Hiruzen said. If he did any research, and I'm sure he has many spies within Konohagakura's walls, he'd know that Hayashi has a second daughter, and that his younger daughter has a more natural calling to the ninja arts than his older daughter. Hold on, Jiraiya said abruptly. Perhaps he was after the Byakugan after all. Why would you say that? Sarutobi inquired. Well, he has the choice of a Biju, or any of the other major Konoha clan's secrets and bloodlines, Jiraiya explained, his incoherent thoughts barely making sense to his sensei. Why the Byakugan? I'd have thought the Sharingan would be. Wait, that's it? The Sharingan, exclaimed Sarutobi, his usual relaxed elderly persona gone. I guess there's a reason they call you the smartest person in Konoha who doesn't have Nara blood running through their veins. Jiraiya smirked. It fit perfectly, and they now had a better idea of what his old teammate was up to. He had to be after Itachi's younger brother, but he was caught off guard when Team 7 was kicked out of the exams. Exactly, and then he would have gone after Hinata to muddle the true nature of his plan, sighed Sarutobi. However, a part of me believes that my estranged student simply saw an opportunity to cause chaos and suffering and grabbed it. However, that's a case solved, Jiraiya said as he dusted his hands. All you have to do is have your ANBU keep a close eye on the Uchiha until something else happens. Alright, would you mind telling me why you have the son of a legendary foreign cage locked up in your basement? As he approached the girl's door, Neji called out, Hinata-sama. He didn't need his Byakugan to be turned on to notice that the girl was wide awake on her bed, her face buried in the tear-stained sheets. Hayashi-sama insists on you eating something. I'm not hungry, Neji Nyai-san, she said, preferring not to face anyone else. The voice that had been attacking her head had long since vanished, but the dark thoughts it had left with her would not be forgotten. Please inform father that I will be skipping dinner. I can't do it, Hinata-sama, sighed Neji. Several other clan members had tried unsuccessfully to get the heiress to eat something before the clan head finally sent his nephew to retrieve the girl. You haven't eaten breakfast and appear to have had something the cooks were hesitant to call even a light lunch. I don't care, she said adamantly, refusing to budge from her stance. Would it be okay if I came inside? Neji asked respectfully, puzzled as to why he didn't simply walk away from the situation and inform Hayashi that his daughter wouldn't be coming out. I guess, Hinata sniffled as she sat up. The door has not been unlocked. Without hesitation, Neji turned the knob and discovered his cousin sprawled across her bed, only now beginning to sit up slightly. You don't appear to be in good health. It's not that. Hinata shook her head before lowering her voice to a whisper, as if it would make a difference in a compound full of people with X-ray vision and exceptional lip-reading abilities. The seal. Neji cocked his head slightly. Do you mean Orochimaru's signature? Yeah, Hinata said, her face dropping as Neji closed the door to give the two some privacy now that they would be discussing topics best left unsaid by others. It calls to me, speaks to you, Neji asked again, unsure if Hinata understood what she was saying. Yes, Hinata said, lifting her head to make eye contact with Neji. It's as if as if Orochimaru himself is whispering to me, feeding my insecurities. Neji remained silent at that point because he didn't know how to respond properly. He knew he could continue talking about the seal on his brow, but from what he was hearing, the cruelty of these two seals was on entirely different levels. Words finally came out of his mouth, but they were not his own, as he remembered what Jiraiya had said to him just a few days before. He couldn't recall it word for word, but he remembered the general conversation. He said, fate is a fickle thing. As a result, it should not be trifled with. It is something that simply sits in the back row and watches the game go on. It does not decide the road you take, does not guide you along any path, and does not choose how you live your life. Take whatever the world has in store for you, and if you don't like it, return it tenfold. Neji Nyai-san, Hinata said slowly, trying to understand what her cousin was saying. Basically, Neji said, still trying to figure out what message he wanted to convey to the clan heiress. You've reached a crossroads in your life where you must choose whether to submit to this or to push yourself through it and prove your worth by proving that not even one of the Sannin can stop you. While his words weren't quite on the same level as someone who could speak publicly, Hinata nodded, understanding what Neji was saying. Several of his words replayed in her mind as she assessed her worth, but not in her own eyes, but in Naruto's. The Uzumaki had never said anything hurtful to her, and Hinata knew he would see her as someone valuable. If she persevered, she might even be praised by the blonde-haired boy, which would send her into overdrive. Neji turned towards the exit after finishing his spiel, knowing he couldn't add much more to the conversation. However, as his fingers gripped the doorknob, he heard Hinata's feet land on the floor. Looking behind him, he noticed that the younger of the two was now standing with poise and grace, in stark contrast to her previous position. Hinata-sama, Neji said slowly, curious to see what she had planned. Inform my father that I will be at the dinner table in 15 minutes, Hinata said, her voice clear and confident. As Neji exited the room, a smile crossed his lips, allowing Hinata to prepare for the meal ahead. Perhaps his words did have some weight after all. Sasuke sighed. His eyelids were heavy, as had become the norm in recent days, and Kakashi was late as usual. The headaches he'd grown accustomed to were just beginning to fade in intensity, and he noticed that his bloodline was putting less strain on his chakra. However, unlike his two teammates, he was unable to create a shadow clone to keep himself entertained. Normally, either of them would have offered to spar with him, but Naruto was still fresh from his fight with Chaoji and appeared to be having an epiphany of some kind, doing God knows what with multiple clones that he kept summoning and dispelling. The Uchiha couldn't bring himself to interrupt him, and he didn't want to. Sakura, on the other hand, was honing the fire jutsu that Kakashi had bestowed upon her. Though the Uchiha was aware that he had received the worst jutsu of the three, he didn't seem to mind all that much in the end. He already knew the Grand Fireball because he was from his clan, which neither of his two teammates had. They appeared to be a little more even now. He couldn't figure out why Sakura had a shadow clone up. Given the girl's meager reserves, it was more likely that it would be a burden once she discovered she had exhausted all of her chakra in 2 minutes. He would have said something, but his female teammate seemed far too preoccupied with what she was doing. As a result, while waiting for Kakashi, Sasuke found himself almost bored out of his mind. The only problem was that they were already 3 hours late. A flash of white smoke erupted in the middle of the practice field, almost on cue. As the other members of Team 7 paused their strange activities to look at the man, Kakashi stepped out of it, clutching an orange book tightly in his grasp. "You're late," exclaimed a few Narutos and even one of the Sakuras. I'm sorry. I was strolling down the road of life when I noticed a large cat-like creature dressed entirely in black following me, and I had no choice but to lead it through the rest of the village and show it the sights. Sure, Sakura said sarcastically, rolling her eyes. So, are we pulling weeds in someone's garden, painting an elderly lady's fence, or catching a cat today? None, in fact, Kakashi said, smiling at the girl. While I would prefer that you focus on improving your teamwork skills, Sasuke is still undergoing sharing and conditioning, and we need to keep up with our training. Wonderful, muttered Sasuke. So, while I spar with you in Taijutsu, Naruto and Sakura will go off and work on their control and reserves, respectively. My cute little genin think they've got me all figured out, Kakashi sheepishly said, almost teleporting over to Sasuke and ruffling the boy's hair. Hey, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto inquired, his face tense given his usual demeanor. Are you sure, Naruto? I'm not sure how to phrase this, but strange things have been happening with my shadow clones. Naruto prodded his fingers together in a manner eerily similar to Hinata's. That's interesting, Kakashi said, his voice as cold as ever. We'll talk about it later, but if you're interested, I've come bearing gifts and goodwill. Seriously, exclaimed Naruto, completely forgetting where his previous train of thought had taken him. Yep, 3 new jutsu for you 3 to learn over the next week, Kakashi said, revealing the scrolls he had hidden in his back pocket. Sensei, I still haven't mastered the first one, Sakura admitted as she bit her lower lip. That's fine. Many jutsu will take months, if not years, to master. Just focus on expanding your repertoire and practicing your jutsu once in a while, and you'll be fine, replied the masked Jounin. Sasuke's eyes narrowed as he realized what Kakashi was saying while looking at his own jutsu arsenal, which currently consisted of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, a handful of fire jutsu learned by scouring the clan files, and the single lightning jutsu he had been given. While not particularly large by any standard, he knew that with his Sharingan always active, it would grow over time once he finished this rigorous training, but for the time being, he'd have to learn techniques the old-fashioned way. Hopefully, he'll have something with a little more zing this time. Ladies first, Kakashi said chivalrously as the three excited genin loomed over the three scrolls in his hands. Thank you, sensei, Sakura said, smiling as she reached forward and grabbed the scroll that Kakashi had indicated. For our favorite Pinky, we've got Katen, T-Mode, which is a nice supportive fire-type jutsu that will help you cauterize almost any wound and soothe any injury. So, a borderline medical technique, Sakura said, nodding she could work with that. It seemed natural that, in addition to her poisons, she would have a medical technique to counteract some attacks. For our hyperactive blonde, we have Futon, K's no Kyudai, something a little defensive so that when you charge into battle, you don't end up looking like a porcupine, Kakashi explained as he handed Naruto a scroll. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto smiled. He was eager to show Iruka what he had discovered one of these days. Finally, we have Raiten Mahayubai for Sasuke, Kakashi said as he handed over the final scroll. Even without knowing the contents of the scroll, Sasuke could tell from the name that this technique would be useful. The implicit smirk on his sensei's face confirmed this. I want you three to go home tonight and start breaking down those jutsu so you can show me what you've learned tomorrow, Kakashi said. Yes, sensei, all three genin said as one, which couldn't help but make Kakashi smile from behind his mask. He was starting to enjoy teaching more and more each day. Maybe he'd start showing up on time, or at least an hour earlier than usual. Gaara's eyes widened as he raised a hand to his head, his brain thumping violently. He was unfamiliar with this location. The walls that surrounded him were not those of a prison cell, but the faint trickle of light signaling the end of the day that dripped through the small window gave the impression that they were. His gourd was nowhere to be found, and the sand armor that usually surrounded him had been stripped away, effectively preventing any escape attempt. When he remembered what had happened, a savage growl escaped his lips as he silently swore that he would crush those who had bested him with the help of his mother. Yet, it was at that moment that he realized something was wrong. Something that had been bothering him for as long as he could remember. Mother. For the longest time, venomous whispers had been tickling his thoughts with each passing second. His mother had shaped and guided him for as long as he could remember. Their words had shaped him into the man he had become, the man everyone feared. But now there was nothing. He couldn't even hear his mother's voice, let alone a whisper. It was deafeningly quiet.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weave offline.